By watching Jungle Emperor Leo, at least the first couple episodes so far, it kind of reminds me in a way of what Babylon 5 did, where you have a setting, you have likable characters to follow, but it lets the reader or the viewer make up their own mind about whatever other commentary might be going on in the background. You can just enjoy it as a story rather than somebody sitting on your shoulder. Okay, viewer, I want you to recognize this, and this social issue. It doesn't do that. It just lets you think about things, and then you can just enjoy the stories for what they are. With Jungle Emperor Leo, it showcases very simple archetypes, both good and evil. It shows cardinal virtues in both humans and the animals, and it also does showcases some of the vices in the humans and even some of the animals. And it makes you basically empathize with a whole bunch of different characters, no matter what their background is, because they make a lot of them fairly likable, even some that only show up for an episode or two. Um, and sometimes even Babylon 5 does the same thing. There's characters that only show up in an episode or two, or maybe a handful of episodes, but they still make a mark. They still do a compare and contrast. So that's what I think is important for most entertainment and media going forward. Have more simple compare and contrast. Have black hats versus white hats. Have virtues versus vices. Um, it's not a bad thing to have a simple horror, like not a simple horror story. Well, you can still do a simple horror story, but it's not a bad idea just to have a simple setup. It shouldn't be a dirty word. It shouldn't be like, oh, you didn't put enough complexity in it. It's like, you know what? Sometimes, guys, it you just want a simple story, like get me from point A to point B, and then get me from point B to point C, and then the ending. You know, there's not too much, overall overthinking in between. Sometimes I want something that's more complex, but sometimes I just want something that's fairly straightforward and where I can just have a good time watching it or reading it or whatnot. Because, yeah, like, could you look at Jungle Emperor Leo and, like, oh no, it's the whole poaching versus whatever conundrum? Yeah, sure, you could, if you wanted to. The important aspect of that show is it lets you make up your mind on what you want to pay attention to. It doesn't beat you over the head with, like, you must pay attention to these important things. And it's like, yeah, that's the reason why most woke fiction bores me out of my skull. They want you to pay attention to whatever personal pet problems the writer has, or what they want to signal to people, like, this is important. It's like, you realize you're going to have people tune out of that just because. Because just take the old adage of when you were a kid. If everybody around you was saying, you have to do this or you have to do that, well, don't be surprised when the readers react like more like kids and be like, meh, I don't want this stuff. Especially not if I want escapism. And I have a feeling that's the reason why so much stuff has, basically spiraled. Besides, the usual cultural suspects, but this is just more for my little bit of reflection on things. There's a reason why certain stories have a timeless quality. Because they let readers infer things if they want to, or they just let the readers go on and entertain themselves. Again, you don't have to look at, like, oh yes, the author meant by the curtains being blue that they were depressed and sadness permeated their life, when in actuality the writer just meant those curtains are blue. So there you go. I suppose this is going to be sort of like a slight little rant, but not by much. Have a good day, everybody.